This is an experiment I started about 11 or 12 months ago, so almost a year this has been going on. This is not a scientific experiment by any means. Basically what it was is I was scanning my own color film and I started thinking, man, I want to maybe get into developing my own film, but I thought, hey, black and white film looks like pretty easy to develop at home. So that's how this all started. However, then I started getting down the weeds of like, if I'm going to start developing my own film, maybe I should just get a 100-foot roll of it since there's so many bulk rolls available specifically for black and white film. And maybe let's do that. And I'll just like roll my own, develop my own, scan my own. It's a fully homegrown project. The problem is I didn't have enough experience with shooting a ton of black and white film. I think I had only personally shot Ilford HP5. I think that was the only black and white film I had shot before I started doing this little experiment. But it was important for me to not do like a boring scientific test. So this is not a true apples to apples comparison. This is not a true comparison at all. This is really just the reality of my impression of these films, the way that I shoot. And I didn't want to take my information from the internet. I wanted to find out for myself. That was the only way for me to find the black and white film that suited my needs. With that being said, the majority of the stocks in this lineup are 400 speed. That was kind of one of the parameters I was sticking to. However, we have plenty of film in here that deviates from that because a lot of people were giving me personal recommendations. Some people that I admire use a specific stock. Lots of different reasons why we have deviated from the 400 speed. But just so you know, I'd say about 80% of these are 400 speed film. 19 different film stocks in total that started almost a year ago. I have done chapters so you can jump around because this is going to be a beefy one. Look, even though the only constant variable in this entire little experiment was me, I also document everything very, very well. So we're going to share the negatives. I'm going to share the positives because I do all my own scans. I know exactly what developer was used for each one because honestly, guys, when I started this, I was using monobaths and my experience with monobath has turned to such a high level of disdain that I don't want to get too far in the weeds of this video talking about monobaths, but I will be doing a separate drop all about why I believe monobaths are not good for beginners. But again, that's going to be a whole separate video. I literally started developing for the first time ever through this process. So there is a lot of different wacky things to look at here. So look, if you're looking for a direct, straight apples to apples image comparison, there's plenty of guys out there that are already doing that. There's a wonderful book where you can get that information from. In fact, this book, it's called Flavor, is actually something I use quite often. The ebook is very inexpensive. That's why I have it here. But I mean, it's pretty rad. There's just so many film stocks in here. I mean, if you want a true apples to apples comparison, I would recommend this book. This is a wonderful reference here. I wanted something, again, that catered to the way I shoot, specifically the way I shoot street, both down in the city or here in my little neighborhood, right? Like something that really is going to benefit me the way that I use it. So 400 speed was one of the main parameters. Another important thing to recall, I guess as a rule, a parameter of this was thinking about price. Because remember, the ultimate goal here was finding what roll am I going to end up investing 100 feet into. And it's not just about money, but it is also about the reality of like, that's like 20 rolls of film. And it's like, wow, you know, for a guy like me, if I shoot 3 rolls in one day, well, that was a whopping killer day, right? So to give you an idea that I don't really shoot a heck of a lot of film. So being stuck into 20 rolls, that could go quite far with a dude like me, you know? So I just wanted to make sure that I was making the right choice. And plus, what a hell of a fun of an experiment, right? So let's get started. Again, chapters are down below. So in this little binder here, I have been collecting photos since I first started doing film, which was back in 2019. Okay, the very first, funny enough, I tell you what the parameters were that these are majority 400 speed film, and the very first one that I started the test on was Ilford Delta 3200. There are specifically 2 very high-speed films because I was very interested in that. Obviously, I'm not interested in the high price tag. You know, the cool thing is that you can get Delta 3200 in a 100-foot roll, but I believe it's about $200. At least that's what it's currently going for over there on Freestyle Photo. You can't even get a bulk roll of it like on somewhere like B&H. Now that's kind of in the mid-range, right? Because honestly, bulk rolls can range anywhere from, I've seen them as low as $65, but then I've also seen them as high as like $300. So I started this with a rally, or I guess rather a protest in downtown Los Angeles. So as you can see in the flavor book, if you want to read what he says about it, you can pause it. So you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like when everything is exactly perfect, I suppose. However, even the author here recommends rating it at 1600. But when I was out there on the day, I was rating it at 800. I took these with the Voigtlander Bessa T. Here's a great example. You can see where I started out where I thought I was going to do like a shot in the garage for every roll. And I'm glad I didn't pursue this. I'm glad I didn't stick to it because it just was like, this is crazy. You could see I had like a daylight bulb, a tungsten bulb, the color chart, the little slate there. No, you know, and I was going to do it at different exposures and things, but then quickly I just took it to the rally. And then I realized like the way that I shoot and the way that I do things, I obviously, it wasn't going to be something that I could do consistently. So I just abandoned it quite early on. But in the beginning, I thought I was going to do more of a scientific test along with like, yeah, I can do both. Why not do both? But I just decided I abandoned it. It was too much for me to care about, to quite honestly. Because again, I'm not looking to shoot things that are perfectly controlled. That's not the way I do film. I do it a lot for the ugliness, the mistakes of it, and that ties in perfect with what you're looking at right here. This was the very first time I ever tried developing black and white on my own, okay? So this, or any time for that matter. And so what happens here is obviously I got it on the reel a little wrong. And I used the little Jobo tank with the little Jobo reel, and that's what this is, right? Somehow it got on the reel incorrectly, but at the end of the day, I didn't hate it. I even ended up sharing this on Instagram because I love the mistakes so much. I think that's why I love film so much. Like I think that the mistakes that come with the film are more organic and more beautiful. But you can see all the weird things that happened in the negative with that, and then you can also see the positives of, I don't know, I embraced it. I fully embraced the ugliness. I love that so much because for me, it's all part of it. You know, I don't cherish any photograph. Clearly, though, I'm not the next Gary Winogrand over here, so it doesn't matter. You know, I don't cherish these shots. It is what it is, you know. But at the end of the day, what I will say that by looking at these photos, you know, I was blown away, honestly. I mean, one of my favorite photos to this day of the kind of the mundane things that I photograph, because I do kind of tend to photograph all things, right? So this kind of stuff, what you're looking at here, this is kind of what I refer to as my mundane collection, right? Like the boring collection. And this is still to this day one of my favorite shots. I love the way that this was rendered. Keep in mind, I was rating this at 800, and a lot of it was because this is back in January, and I don't know if you can tell or not from, you know, the scans, but it was a little smogged out back then. Not just smogged out, but also overcast. So because of that, you know, I was rating it a little more, and I always want to get more onto it. And with the Voigtlander Bessa T, that was actually a camera that I did meter with a lot more than say my M6, because with the Voigtlander, I don't have to hold it to my eye to meter it. I've talked about this in the past, but you can just look down and meter it. And that's one of the beauties of the Voigtlander Bessa. And so with these, I did tend to meter more, but keep in mind, metering for 800, not 3200. But I think the consensus is most people rate it at 16 anyways, which is still crazy high for black and white. And that's one of the reasons why this wasn't the ultimate winner in the end for me for who I'm going to choose for the bulk roll. And by the way, I already did. I think it was about a month ago that I came to a winner, and I've been bulk loading already. If you pay close attention, you probably already know that. But if you're new here, you would have no clue. But this shot of the RV through the hole in the fence, I absolutely love it. The 32 is so good to me. You know, if it wasn't for it being such a high ASA and such a high price tag, who knows? The experiment may have started and ended right there. No, it wouldn't have ended because it was just, you know, I was stoked to do this thing, and it was only the first thing. But regardless of the mistake that I ran into with it falling off the reel or whatever happened there, I was blown away by the images that 3200 is. It's hands down definitely in my top 5 of all the 19. Let's see what the next one is in here. Oh yes, Holga 400. Okay, Holga 4, this is an interesting film too. So first of all, it comes in a reusable canister. So I was like, sick, I get to hold on to that because, you know, these little canisters, you just pop them open and you reuse them. It's cool. And there's a few films in this lineup that come with reusable canisters. But as you'll notice, I kept all of them, not just for this project, but just because I like holding onto the canisters. Even when I get my color film developed at the lab, I always request my canister back. And they actually like it because then they don't have to worry about recycling it or whatever. I didn't even mention, with the 3200, it was my first roll with the monobath, specifically the Cinestill Df96 monobath. Both the 3200 and this Holga 400 were both developed with the Cinestill Df96. You know, the Holga was another one where a lot of people online aren't like super stoked about it, but I kind of liked it. I really liked it, oddly enough, for its halation. And usually I don't like halations with a lot of film. It's actually like, I know a lot of people like the halation in like the Cinestill 800T. I know that's color, but still, you guys know it halates. I don't really like that. But the Holga was kind of dreamy. It had like a very different kind of look to it. Especially if you look at these ones, like the thing I noticed the most is like how black you could get the blacks, but at the same time, just like how the highlights glowed. And it just seemed wild to me. Now this is kind of, I believe this may be like a combination of like mundane with maybe a little bit of, this is like a random street portrait that I did. You know, someone just comes out to see why you're taking a picture of their truck and then you just have them stand by their truck. But you'll notice like this one got a little boned when it was in like a backlit situation. But I mean, hey, that's a lesson for like shooting film in general, you know. But the ones that came out, I really, really liked it. Like I really liked this film to the point where for the longest time I thought, yeah, this is gonna be probably the one because it is so inexpensive. But you can see it's only $7 per roll. But keep in mind, that's only 24 exposures. I don't know if they make a 100-foot roll available in Holga 400. I think maybe the reason why it's not readily available in 100-foot rolls is because there is a rumor that it's the same film as Fomapan. And Fomapan you can get in 100-foot rolls. And Fomapan is in the lineup because I wanted to see Fomapan 400 for $100. That's one of the reasons why I tried out both, because I wanted to see if that rumor was true, but we'll get to that. But yes, Holga 400 continued to hold a special place in my heart. It was not the winner at the end of the day, but I do think it is a really unique film, and I would recommend it if you're into heavy halations and deep blacks. It's a really cool film. Okay, after that was Rollei RPX 400. So with the RPX is where, as you can see from this photograph, I finally got my Leica M3 back from Steve's camera. It got CLA'd, so then I could put the Voltlander down and get to it. And as you can see, yes, that is with the 40mm Summicron. That is primarily kind of like my go-to everyday carry lens for that camera. It pretty much is almost the whole width of the viewfinder, so you don't really have to worry about frame lines or anything like that. This was still using the Cinestill Df96, and here I think you can start to see a little bit of the degradation of using the monobath on the third roll. I mean, I know a lot goes into like, hey man, we don't know what you were doing with the scans to make that sort of claim and everything, but it is true, so I'll keep my mouth shut about the monobath. And as you can see, some of them came through quite crunchy. I love the one of the mariachi band. Look, I didn't love this film, but I also didn't hate this film. It was just kind of like a whatever kind of film for me. You can see this is another crazy protest. None of these photos really slap. The bulk of the photos this day, this was back when I still had the M10. I've done a whole video on this day. This was the wild day. This was like the first real major protest that we had this year. This was way back in February. And man, I mean, it was awesome. It was like the true highway takeover, and all of it is there. I got a whole video on it, a lot of gnarly day, but some of my favorite photos taken that day were on digital with the Leica M10. So if you want to check that out, I'll link that below. Whereas you can see, I wasn't really like super stoked on shooting the film. You know, I don't know what it was. I just wasn't feeling it. So I shot this roll and then I kind of just stopped using the M3 that day and just stuck to the M10. And it's funny that I did, because I ended up shooting like over 900 photographs that day. It was insane. But this is probably one of my favorite photos out of that RPX batch, as well as when the girls are looking through the fence. I don't know, it's a killer film. Now there's also even one in here where I snuck in a third lens, which is my 75mm f2.5 Voltlander color Heliar lens to get this shot right here, just the girl all alone there. So that's with a 75mm. I don't even have a 75mm viewfinder. The one that I have is an 85mm, so this is using the 85mm viewfinder. But you can see I had all three lenses with me that day because I was treating it like a true event. So a lot of these are the 40, but also the 28, as well as that 75. So 3 different lenses used on that with the M3. And ultimately, though, this was just a film that I just didn't feel excited about. I didn't hate it. I also didn't love it. So a lot of this is just going to go off of feeling, but maybe you can feel it as well. This is kind of the way I was approaching it. Like, which one is going to give me consistent results for the chaotic way that I shoot? At the end of the day, RPX 400, I had no desire to ever touch this film ever again. I don't know, take it as you may, you know. No offense or shade to Rollei, but I just wasn't feeling this particular one. And I know that's a crazy claim when it was literally just one day of going out and shooting, one roll. But I don't know. I think to me that reveals a lot. Maybe to you it doesn't, and that's fine. We could agree to disagree on that, you know? All right, the next one is still on the M3. And this is when it gets weird with the monobaths, and it kind of breaks my heart because this film stock is hands down one of my favorite ones, Cinestill XX. And we all know that this is just the repurposed XX Kodak film. And this was exciting to me because I'm like, man, back when I was doing this, you could kind of easily find Kodak bulk rolls of XX, the real stuff. And I know that you can get cheaper rolls of it from other people other than Cinestill, but I thought I would go for the gold because I am such a huge fan of 800T Cinestill, and we all know that's just Kodak as well. I love the photos, but you can tell there is an issue with this, and I did a short on this as well, which you may have already seen before this video. So the biggest problem with this is now we're into the fourth roll that I'm using with the DF96, and you can see that we're already getting some issues with reticulation. Now, a lot of this is fault of me as well, right? Because this is the biggest problem with the Cinestill, specifically their monobath, okay? Is theirs is heavily reliant on temperature to the point where you can see what happens if you don't have all the temperatures super correct. Now, I understand this can also happen with a more traditional way of developing, you know. However, this monobath is way more prone to it because if you want to get into the realm of pushing and pulling the film, the only way you can push and pull the DF96 is by temperature. And in my experience, with just a little time that I've been doing normal developing, it doesn't rely on temperature as much as it relies on time. In my experience, the way I've been developing recently with Ilfosol 3. Right? It's more of a time thing, not a temperature thing in terms of pushing and pulling. So to push and pull the Cinestill monobath, it's all temperature. And this is where we got into the issue with the reticulation, and it's really, really bad. So if you don't know what it is, I'll zoom in on these so you can see what looks like chickenpox, or I like to refer to it as amoebas. It looks like little amoebas, like you're looking at it on a petri dish. It goes awry when it's exposed to a different temperature than what the developer is, right? So I'm talking in terms of the rinse bath. And it shows you how delicate it is because I was trying to monitor the temperature. Like I have a Cinestill thermostat even, like a really nice one that Cinestill makes, and I was monitoring the temperatures and I had a water bath going. The monobath was so sensitive that it just being off a few degrees caused all this reticulation. It was a problem for me. So I was like, ah, man, that's where that first batch of DF96 ended. I took fault for it and I said, look, I'm not going to give the monobath a bad rap because of this, because I was taking part ownership in it. It's still to say that I do believe that the Cinestill DF96 monobath is still super sensitive. It just is. These were all with the M3, by the way, and since these are around town, I'm going to venture to say that all of these were probably with the 40mm Summicron. I still shared them. Look, I share everything on Instagram. I just do not care. Like, I love Instagram more for me. That's why I say I don't care if I get 8 likes per post. It's for me to have a little journal that I can easily go back and refer to. This is still with the DIY and the Cinestill pad with the film holder, because you can tell, because you can see like the whole edges of the film holder there. So this is back when I was still really doing the ghetto scans even. Either way though, regardless of that, I still love the XX. I don't know if I would invest in Cinestill XX. I don't even think they make it available in a 100-foot roll. I think with all the stuff that happened, it is very hard now to get Kodak XX, but if you see it online, nab it up. You'll just have to like watch a few videos to figure out how to remove the remjet. I love XX, but ultimately, I feel like the issues with the remjet, being nervous of that, and just the inability to get a 100-foot roll nowadays kind of took it out. Also, it's not that fast. It's a 250 speed film. Apparently, I did let the reticulation affect my ability to keep using Cinestill, because according to my documents, the next one was with the Bergger ONE monobath. I guess I wasn't looking to blame Cinestill, but I was just ready to be done with it. So next up is 100% one of my favorite. Once I shot this, I shot about 3 or 4 more rolls of this, Kodak Tri-X 400. Now, the downside with this is back to the Voigtlander Bessa T, because the M3, maybe you noticed from some of the past shots, it still had some light leaks going on it. I forgot. Before I took it to Steve's camera, I took the M3 to Canada camera. They're very inexpensive compared to Steve's camera, but you know, maybe I rushed them a little bit or something. But when he put it back together, he either forgot to put a couple seals in, or you know, he just missed that to begin with. Either way, it didn't get fixed So I ended up having to get a second run through on it over at Steve's camera. And so over there, it was, about triple the price, but it came back pristine. So that's why these ones were with the Voigtlander Bessa T, because it was over at Steve's. But man, the Tri-X, absolutely love it. I love this. I love it. And again, now we're back on the Bessa T. You can see when I have a meter in my hands, I perform a little better. A lot of these are staged portraits though, so keep that in mind. This is kind of like an amalgamation here. Love Tri-X. I love it so much. A lot of this is due because, Andre Wagner is someone that I really admire, and he swears by Tri-X 400, or at least he used to. And yeah, I mean, you can see why. It's a wonderful film. I love it, but I guess it came down to affordability. Let's see, how much is a 100-foot roll of Tri-X? It's not bad, actually. It's only $165. If you're on a budget, it wouldn't be the choice, but if money's not an issue, I think this would have been the winner. And I think the photos speak for themselves. Again, comparing it to the way that I shoot to other things. And I know it's not fair to do that, but hey, man, I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. Hey, when you first had, chicken pot pie, maybe you hated it. It's like, well, maybe you try it again in a few years. Maybe you just had the wrong kind, or maybe the wrong chef made it for you. With film, it's not really an issue of the chef. I mean, unless you wanted to blame it on the development, which is also fair to do. And I get it, right? Look, I talked that trash about RPX 400. Maybe a couple years from now, I shoot it again and I go, wow, I have a banger of a day, and then I love it. I don't know. You never know. But also, it's when I'm talking about these, I'm not just talking about the quality of the photo itself. I am kind of talking about the way the photo was rendered, right? And I know, again, development has a lot to do with it as well. But keep in mind, too, I know that the fact that now that this was with a different monobath, the Bergger ONE, and as much as I hate monobaths nowadays, I will say strongly with my experience that the Bergger ONE monobath is quite a bit better of an improvement over the Cinestill Df96 monobath. It just is. And also here you can see the proof is in the pudding. I mean, again, this is with the first roll. So I will admit that in my experience, the first roll is always the best with any monobath. But also I think it speaks to the film stock as well. So now that I had the Bergger ONE monobath, I thought, hey, that's great. I'll also try their black and white film with their monobath. And theirs is the Bergger Pancro 400. Forgive my horrible French, but Bergger, I think, is how they say that. So these are still with the Voigtlander Bessa T. Oh yes, and now we are finally on to the Rollei EZ35. Things got a little better because the Rollei EZ35 is a really better way to scan versus, the DIY setup. So you can see this is a weird batch. This is like some behind the scenes. So I was DPing a pilot for a web series back then. So there is some BTS shots on here, as well as like when I went and operated on a commercial in Las Vegas. So there's just some weird random BTS stuff on here. I was the B-cam operator on a commercial in the middle of being the DP on a pilot back here in LA. So, and then also went on a little trip down to Laguna Beach with Marianne. So yeah, man, I mean, there's quite a collection here of different kinds of shots with this Bergger Pancro 400 and then back on set, so it's kind of a funny roll. Look, I really liked this film. It's a little crunchy, but when it hits, it hits. Keep in mind, this is with the Voigtlander Bessa T, so these were all going to be metered properly for the most part. I love this one with the guy and his dog. This was a nice film. You can see it's quite grainy compared to the Tri-X 400 and maybe even some of the other ones we looked at. But for what it is, I don't know what it was about it, but maybe this shot here on the rocks, there's certain qualities that I'm looking at. Again, without being too nerdy about it, I don't know what it is, right? It's just looking at it and going, I don't know, like sometimes the contrast just seems really good to me. Again, I know there's lots of other variables into that other than the emulsion itself. I don't know how many times I can keep saying it. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things that you feel it. It doesn't always slap, as you can tell. So that's always a thing to notice too. Like, how is it going to handle the underexposure versus the overexposure in situations like that? And knowing that when I do the scan, I'm not going to town in the grade, so to speak. I'm just adjusting a few minor things in Negative Lab Pro. I'm not going to try to salvage it that much, especially when it's like something mundane like this house and I don't care. Well, there you see, like, it gets a little crunchy in those shadow areas, right? So there are certain things, certain aspects. But with that being said, this was still a pretty good performer. Especially this was a great one to see, like, wow, so many different scenarios of these different areas of being on set. You know, this one also here you can see some issues with the there's a word for this when you can see the sprockets. And I think this is maybe due to the agitation in conjunction with it being a monobath. Now, the way the Bergger ONE works is you can't really push and pull it. There's none of this like changing the temperature to push or pull it like how the Cinestill monobath is. The Bergger ONE is 10 minutes only, 10 minutes with all films. So that's another negative of the Cinestill monobath. Every film has its own like limit and temperature or something. I think it's temperature. Every film has its own temperature, I believe is how the Cinestill monobath is. Where the Bergger ONE, same temperature, same time for all films. The difference is they do give a little chart with most commonly used black and white films of suggested ISOs to meter your film at when you're shooting. So you see what I mean? Like these monobaths are kind of a little complex and a little tricky, you know? It's not like a constant thing like what you get with a normal developer. At the end of the day, I did not choose the Bergger Pancro 400 because I don't know why. Maybe because it's hard to get a 100-foot roll of this because I really did like the results of it. And you can see how cheap it is. It's only $8 for a 36 roll. But yeah, I don't know if it's available in a 100-foot roll. So that's obviously going to be a factor too. Well, yeah. Yes. So now we're back on the M3. We got the M3 back. And now we're on to Ilford HP5 Plus. Now, this was a film that I had already shot with. I've shot this film on my M6 before. So I was already familiar with Ilford HP5. This seems to be like a lot of people's kind of go-to in the middle choice. This one was featured in a video that I did. It is available here on this channel, but it first was released on my main filmmaking channel because it was also to, I don't know why I did it over there. I guess it was before we really started doing long form videos here on this channel. It was the M3 in Venice Beach with both the Ilford HP5 Plus and the Kodak T-MAX 3200. But let's go in order here. Let's talk about the Ilford HP5 first. So you can see instantly, I ran into some issues here with the agitation or the developing or something. Luckily to our community here, because it was someone noticed it on, a few people noticed it on the short that I made about, you know, developing black and white at home, as they noticed that I had put the film onto the reel the wrong way. So, you know, you're supposed to put the emulsion, you know, facing inward. Certainly during that short, I was putting it on where the emulsion was facing outward. And that can mess up some issues. And that may have something to do with, like, who knows, you know, how many times I did that, because I never really used to pay attention to what way I was loading the film onto the reel. Just be aware of that. You know, that's something to note, because that could be an issue with these marks that I'm getting. But also I think that in the beginning, right, because I don't know what roll we're on now, but my agitation method was kind of all over the place. It took me a while to realize that when using the app, yeah, the Massive Dev app, I even use the Massive Dev app with the monobaths, you know, just mainly for the timer for the agitation and stuff. And I think it took me a while to just use the guide in Massive Dev, literally agitate exactly how that logo is moving up and down. It took me forever to just be like, oh, I should just be doing that. And because I was just really kind of all over the place with the agitation, I don't think that's good either. So there you go. You know, someone else may like completely check out now, and I, you know, I can't fault them for that. You know, because it's like, look, you know, it's a lot, in a lot of variables that would influence the way your photos turn out when you're like developing them yourself at home. You know, but again, with that being said, there's certainly some in here where I don't know. I kind of like it, even with the crazy whatever even happened with this halvesies one. There's something on the sign that went awry. I don't know if that was on the day or if that was in the development. I don't know what it is, but I still like this photo. It's not perfect, but you know, there's still elements of it here. But at the end of the day, this wasn't a film. Again, I mean, even this one, I feel like this one, everything is, the stars are aligned. I don't know what it is. And keep in mind, this was not my first time shooting Ilford HP5, right? So I've shot this before on my M6 and just really wasn't feeling it. I mean, I love this one with the broken weird trike in the dirt. Can't tell you. Again, I don't know what it is that reaches out and grabs me. Honestly, looking at these scans again, of the Ilford HP5. Hey man, it's not bad. You know, I really like these skateboarder ones. I wish that I would have timed it out a little better, but still, you know, it's not horrible. Like, these photos still work. I still used them in the video if you saw the Venice Beach video, but definitely some issues on the developing side with this roll. I will admit that. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't one that I was super stoked on to get a 100-foot roll of it. So $155. I mean, honestly, I would just pay $10 more and just get the Tri-X 400. So maybe that's why I just couldn't justify the cost for the results of what it was. I just wasn't that stoked on it. Okay, then we jump to the T-MAX 3200. Boy, what a disappointment this film was. And I had high hopes for it based upon my experience with Ilford 3200. This is nowhere near the performance of the Ilford, in my opinion. And if you saw the video I did out there in Venice with both the 3200 T-MAX and this Ilford HP5, it was all the lenses. It was my entire lineup of Leica M lenses, so you just have to go watch it to see what's what. But they were all with the M3. So you can see this is $14 just for one roll. Freestyle sells it for $15 a roll. This stuff is so expensive. Yeah, I'm not even finding the 3200 in bulk rolls. I can imagine it'd be quite pricey. No, I mean, if I had to choose a 3200 speed film, it would not be this one. It would be the Ilford Delta 3200. I just was not impressed by the results of this film whatsoever. And again, you know, it was a pretty overcast day. It wasn't great out there. You can see I was using the 15mm on the M3, so pretty nuts. And again, still having issues with developing. I'm going to blame that on my agitation method or something. You know, you could easily blame this on the Bergger ONE, but the Ilford photos looked better than that. And these were all done the same day, like, you know what I mean? The same process. So it doesn't make sense that this would be so far off what the Ilford is. But again, this was shot during a darker time. But if you saw the video, you can clearly see I was rocking the Light Lens Lab 50mm 1.2, you know, so I was getting more light in there for sure. I mean, honestly, this is a cool photo. I love the way this turned out. Again, I embrace the ugliness. I just do. So I know a lot of people don't, but I do. And I love the way that turned out. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, yeah, definitely not a 3200 film. Definitely not. They even talk about that in the flavor book. I don't think I was rating this one at 800, which maybe I should have been, like what I did with the Ilford 3200. Pretty sure I was rating this at 1600, but maybe if you go back and rewatch the video, maybe I say differently in there. I don't know. Either way, nah, that just wasn't going to be it for me. Okay, after that, we have Rollei Retro 400S. Now, I was a little nervous about this one because I was not impressed at all by the Rollei RPX, as you can remember. Also, a lot of people online don't really have a lot of positive things to say about the Rollei Retro, so I guess I was a little nervous about it, but man, I liked it way better than the RPX. So again, maybe this just ties in with what I like, you know, because it seems to be the opposite of what everyone else online likes. So these are with the M3, really wild, weird shots. Again, still having issues with the agitation or the development. And you'll notice all these issues that I'm having, when I abandon the monobaths, all those issues go away, right? So you kind of get an idea of why I'm going to make the video in the future about why no one should be using monobaths ever. This is an interesting roll because some of it was like around the neighborhood and having a good time with it, honestly. And then also, I believe, took it back downtown towards the middle of the roll. Yeah. So then took it back downtown, and not bangers by any means, but still some pretty interesting results. You know, just a weird film that seems to do pretty damn good for how I shoot it. And honestly, some of the shots, like this one in particular, kind of reminds me of the Tri-X 400 a little bit. You know, it's kind of a cool film, and I didn't see any issues with it, and I just liked the way it rendered way more than the RPX. Ultimately not a winner because I don't know, it didn't speak to me that hard, but I didn't feel the kind of negatives that most people you'll find online have to say about it. Yeah, you can get a roll of the Retro 400S for $115, which isn't bad. Look, if you compare it to the RPX is $180. No, I don't understand that. Again, how can it be more than Tri-X? Like, none of these films, certainly not Rollei RPX 400, they should not be more expensive than Kodak Tri-X 400. It's unwarranted in my opinion. But if you were so gung-ho about Rollei film, yeah, get the Retro over the RPX. So now we're in like the middle of the journey here, and I've already done a full-length video on this one, and it is the Kentmere Pan 400. Still on the M3. These were taken all over the place. Surprisingly, that video did pretty well, honestly. So if you want to go check it out, I'll link it below. One of my favorite photos of all time came out of this batch. This is still with the Bergger ONE, by the way, and it is this photo, and maybe you recognize it from the thumbnail even, but yeah, dude's okay, by the way, but if you want to know the context of this, you can check out the video. Again, it's hard to compare, you know, the way that I'm comparing these things, but I think it was just the variety of the locations that I went, in conjunction with, you know, the same variables as far as the camera and the lenses, and in this particular case, the Bergger ONE, it kind of spoke to me in a way similar to the way the Kodak Tri-X spoke to me. I've gotten a lot of good comments about this particular photo right here. And in fact, in the video, if you go watch it, I took this same photo with the A7C II, and man, nothing slaps harder than this one. But I understand, you know, it's the subject matter as well that kind of influences it. But I just kind of like the way it performed in every situation. And I know that not all films had the advantage of doing this, but they also kind of did, right? You know what I mean? Just because it's not the exact same subject matter doesn't mean that I was shooting in all kinds of different crazy variables. I mean, look at the Bergger Pancro 400 film where all those different set locations, you know, and those are quite dark. I don't light things like in a commercial fashion. My stuff is pretty dimly lit, you know? I mean, look, here's a prime example of these guys in behind these bars here at this historic jail, and just to know, like, it recovered all that detail. Granted, I did meter these. I did have a little handheld Sekonic light mate. I think it's called a twin mate for the M3. So this is metered, but with that little twin mate. So, you know, it is what it is. Take it as you may. But yeah, I don't know. This one really, really spoke to me. So I put it in the top 5. You can see it's only $8 for a 36 exposure roll, and B&H sells it for $100 for a 100-foot roll. You know, it's smack dab in the middle in terms of price ranges that we've seen so far. And readily available. And if you don't know, you know, Kentmere is owned by Harman, which is also Ilford. So they're all kind of the same company. Okay, after that was the Kodak T-MAX 400. And this also, I already featured this in a full-length video. Now, seeing as how disappointed I was with the 32, I was feeling a little nervous about this film, but at the end of the day, as you can see, it held up well. This didn't disappoint me as bad as the 3200, but as you can see, like, these didn't really have the latitude that the Kentmere did. It's not a bad film. One of my favorite photos actually are on here of all the black and whites I've done downtown. Well, before I did the Dodgers rally. The Dodgers rally was one that I was super stoked on, and I feel like that was some of the best black and whites I've taken downtown. But until then, one of my favorite photos is from this T-MAX 400 batch, which is this one right here. The lady walking with the baby on her back. I love this photograph. I don't want the photo itself to influence my choice of the film, even though, yeah, this is by far one of my favorite photos. Got lucky with the light just splashing right in there on them perfectly. But at the end of the day, the rest of this roll doesn't have those same results, you know? So I guess what it revealed to me is the versatility of this film just isn't quite where something like the Kentmere or the Tri-X is, personally, in my opinion. You know, it's quite very easy to underexpose this stuff, even though this one with the guy walking into the theater looks pretty rad, but it's just like, oof, it just doesn't quite have the dynamic range or versatility or whatever you want to call it that I was getting out of some of the other 400 speed films that we've looked at. So yeah, it's just kind of pushing that under territory a little bit, and maybe even it's not even a true 400. Maybe it's more like a 200 film. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't go with T-MAX 400 either. But you can see you can get a 100-foot roll of it for $200. Again, I don't know why the 400 T-MAX is more expensive than the Tri-X. It's wild to me, but apparently I guess it's supposed to be better. But in my experience, first impressions, I just wouldn't. Knowing what it does with me and how I am, I would 100% rather have the Tri-X over the T-MAX. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Ilford Delta 400. These, you may have also seen some of these. Certainly, if you're on the Instagram, you've seen all of these. As far as video goes, some of these have been featured because this was somewhere I went and shot my buddy Omar when he was doing his fencing practice over there in Burbank. And so, yeah, a lot of these are gnarly. These are with the flash too. So I might have got a little wild First time shooting flash on the M3. So this is before I broke the port on it. So yeah, but then there's some other kind of just, kind of ones around town. I love this one of the little car. I was pretty excited about this one because I was so blown away by the Delta 3200. And then, yeah, the Delta 400 did not disappoint. No negatives to say about this film. It feels like it performs in all areas very well. I think maybe it came down to price, I would imagine. So yeah, $159 for a 100-foot roll, $175 on B&H. It's actually cheaper on Freestyle. So you got to check it in both sites because some items are more expensive on B&H and some items are more expensive on Freestyle. $159, which honestly isn't bad. That's pretty decent. But again, that was around the same price as the Tri-X 400. And if it came to that decision for me, hands down, I would choose the Tri-X over the Delta 400. It's just the results of that Tri-X. And plus, keep in mind, I love the Tri-X so much that I went on to shoot like 3 more rolls of this. Funny enough, though, spoiler, it was not the ultimate winner. Okay, then we have a weird one of the batch. It was this Ilford FP4 Plus. Now, I say weird one because I was not even acknowledging any of the slower films. Like I said in the beginning, I was primarily focusing on 400 speed film. I wanted the max amount of versatility, and I just felt like 400 was the sweet spot. But this was one that was personally recommended to me. And this was also featured in the Delta 400 video because I shot the Delta 400 on the same day that I shot this FP4 Plus. So I did shoot them back to back, as you would see in that video linked below. So yeah, it starts at the fencing yard. Pretty gnarly shots. Now these are off frame because I've been having issues with using the external 28mm viewfinder on the M3. So I just stopped using external viewfinders altogether on that thing. And I think it's just because the placement is so far off with the cold shoe. So either way, but that's why those are off. And this is a prime example of why I need a 400 speed film, because the 125 is just way too slow. And I was using the flash, but then as you can see, this is when I started having issues with it. And so I wasn't able to do any of these street portraits with the flash. So if you go and check the video out, you can see where I had my Sony camera with me. So I did shoot digital side by side with this. And then that video kind of turned into a digital day because I couldn't get the flash to work with this slow film. But you'll see I still was able to recover it quite nicely. This might look a little too recovered, but hey, not bad, right? So it still has a lot of versatility. And this got me starting to think about, hey, now that I use a real developer, maybe what my next 100-foot roll will be, it may just be a slower speed film, because now that I'm doing a more traditional way of developing, I can easily push and pull a lot easier. Keep in mind, these are all with Bergger ONE, and you can't push and pull these. So yeah, because of that slowness, did not win. Not this time around. The next ones down the line would be Arista 400. So you can see this in my No Kings video. I shot this alongside Tri-X 400. And it's just night and day, the results of the Tri-X that I got on that day versus this Arista stuff. Funny enough, my flash was working that day. But man, this Arista, oof, I don't know what to say, guys. This is such a gnarly film. And I don't know, to me, it's like I developed this the same way, the same day that I developed the Tri-X 400 because I shot these at the No Kings. You can see this started in a non-No Kings thing, just getting some gnarly shots around town. Like, I love this one that says watch out for children. I'm okay that it has these issues. So clearly maybe some agitation issues here. I don't know. But isn't it funny that the Tri-X roll that was developed the same day, the same way, did not have all these agitation issues? Not this bad anyways. I mean, this is such a gnarly roll. And here's the thing though, I think they call it EDU for a reason. Like, this is primarily for, students, EDU meaning educational, I believe, but it's just such a gnarly film where it's way too gnarly. Like, I don't know, it's hard for me to blame it on the development, because if we go and look at the shots that were also developed that same way, the same day, they didn't turn out that gnarly. So, I mean, you can even see the difference in the negatives. Look how clean the Tri-X is. Look how clean the negative is. You know what I mean? So it's crazy to think that it's all to blame on the development. It's not. It's the roll. These were developed the same exact way, and they're just instantly night and day. They're just super crystal clear. And I just, again, this is what I mean. This is why I say I don't need to do like a true scientific test. I just need to go shoot the film the way it is. I mean, you may have already seen this video. If not, again, they'll all be linked down below. But this is just, even the ones that didn't make a good picture, like it's still there. Like it's not all this craziness to the emulsion. It's wild to me. So the Arista just instantly put a bad taste in my mouth. Okay, now the Fomapan. Now this was featured in a video I did for Wotancraft because I was shooting Fomapan alongside my pocket camera, a digital camera. And I was kind of excited about this because you'll notice this one also comes in a reusable canister. And it was rumored to be the same emulsion as Holga 400. But man, I would venture to say that this is the same emulsion as the Arista EDU. This stuff is just as gnarly, you know, if you look at it and you just see it and you're like, man, what is up with this film? Here's another thing with this though. So keep in mind, we're still using the Bergger ONE monobath here, right? And now we're getting down quite a few rolls. It seems to be that around the 6th roll, things really start to go awry with this Bergger ONE monobath, right? And isn't that funny that it was around the 5th roll when I saw the reticulation with the Cinestill monobath. So you notice like you can't really do because some of them claim that you can do like up to 20 rolls. Around the 6th roll, things start getting a little gnarly. But also like, hey man, Fomapan, Action 400, and Arista EDU 400 just aren't the greatest emulsions, you know, because you can get them for very, very cheap. You can see the Arista EDU 400 is only $85 for the bulk roll, and it is out of stock right now, right? So you know. At least it's popular, right? But maybe that's because of its price, and also maybe a lot of schools use it. And you'll notice Fomapan Action 400 is just a little bit more at $100. But just based upon my first impression results, I couldn't squeeze the trigger on either of those. But look, I'm not ruling out the fact like maybe it also had a lot to do with the monobath. So because of that, this next roll was developed with a fresh new bottle of Bergger ONE monobath. I wasn't willing to let go of it just yet. And that is the Kentmere Pan 200. So this one snuck in last minute. I've done a full dedicated video on this film. It was a fun day just kind of cruising around town. And yeah, it seemed to be a little bit popular here, so I'll link it down below. Maybe you already seen it, but I love this film. I love this film so, so much. My only hesitancy was because it is, you know, it's a 200 and not a 400. But as you can see, it's only $100 for the bulk roll. Very affordable, very excellent results. I loved it. I loved it. The only reason why it didn't end up being the winner is because I was nervous of that 200 speed, mainly because I wasn't quite ready to step away from the monobath, because you'll see fresh batch. Here we see it for the 3rd time when it's the first roll with the monobaths. Excellent results. So now the next one, I actually ended up shooting 2 rolls of it, but it's just because it's kind of the only way you can buy it is in a 2-pack, and it is this Kono 400 black and white film. Now these guys are fairly new from what I understand, and this is still, I believe, with the Bergger ONE. You still see some issues with some agitation or something, still having, it still was, you know, every now and then, you know, whatever weird is going on with my agitation in the developing, only with a few shots though, only with a couple of them, but some of these really hit hard. But yeah, the Kono is not bad. I quite like it actually. So we can also take a quick peek at the 2nd roll. By the time we got onto this Kono 400, I had thrown that Bergger ONE in the trash can. Maybe you saw that Instagram reel or YouTube short. And all of these were now with ilfosol 3. So that was the way that I started developing. And from what I understand, I guess my research wasn't very good. You guys let me know in the comments. But apparently ilfosol 3 may not be the best developer for 400 speed film. Apparently it might be better for slower speed films. So if you have a better performing developer for a 400 speed film, please drop it in the comments and let us all know. Yeah, so this was my first time doing a real developing process with the fixer. I just used the ilfosol rapid fixer. I was instantly like, yeah, why was I just not doing this all along? This roll, so I shot this the same day as I shot this Tri-X. So these are all side by side. This was another big protest in downtown LA. I was using flash with both. Look, I didn't hate the results. It wasn't as awesome as the Tri-X, but still, it's not bad. You know, it's a pretty wild film. It's gnarly. I do like the Kono 400. I really do. Maybe if my heart hadn't already been set on a certain one, because by this point I was already kind of deciding which one I would go for the bulk roll. Let's just see how much Kono 400 goes for bulk. Yeah, here's their black and white. So it's only 120 bucks for a 100-foot roll. As you can see, I paid $18.50 to get the dual pack of just 2 rolls of it. But if you wanted to get a bulk roll, 120, not bad, I guess, for what it was. Honestly, that's a solid choice. I do like the Kono 400 that much. I think I would put it in the top 5, but ultimately it wasn't the winner, and I still wouldn't place it above Tri-X 400 either. But Tri-X was also not the winner. That same day, so this was one of the days where I shot 3 rolls. So I shot the Kono 400, I also shot alongside the Tri-X 400, and then that same day was also this double film. The double film is actually what I showed up there with. So, because half of this roll is around town. So it went double film and then Kono and then Tri-X. So I shot Tri-X last that day. Kono was in the middle. So this double film daily 400 is it's just one of those weird random films that I found. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. Okay, this is interesting. It's 400 speed. Let's go try it out. But as you can see, it's a little gnarly. It really kind of reminded me of the Holga 400 because you can see some gnarly halations when it gets overexposed, like way too much. It's actually worse than the Holga 400. This was just a little too wild for me. It's almost like a better performing Fomapan or something. I just wasn't really feeling it that much, but cool, a unique film, I will give it that, but it didn't make it to the top 5. Okay, so then we have another one that was random. It's a 100 speed film, but this was another one that was personally recommended to me, so I wanted to try it out, and oh man, it is so good. But it's also important to note out that this was the first film I was able to use with the new Kex meter for my M3. And that's when things really started changing in terms of the, I guess, the results, right? So bear all that in mind. So this is the Fujifilm Neopan Pro Acros 100 Mark II, I guess. I don't know. It's a crazy ass long name. This is a beautiful film though. And you know, when I think about the results of this compared to the results of the Kentmere 200, compared to the results of the Ilford FP4 Plus, you know, these are the things that really got me thinking of being like, okay, you know, now that I'm using the ilfosol 3, yeah, man, you know, the next time I go to buy my second 100-foot roll, I think I will lean more towards the slower speeds because I really do like the results of them. However, I would be operating in the terms of knowing that I'm going to be pushing it at least one stop. And now that I'm using a more traditional way of developing, it's so much easier to do. But yeah, I was really stoked on this film. I don't think I would end up going for this one for a bulk roll though, mainly because I can't seem to find it in a bulk roll, but it is $13 a roll. So yeah, I failed to mention earlier, I should add that all of these were scanned with Negative Lab Pro. That's what I use. It's very simple to use. In the beginning, I was doing a really haggard scanning setup where, believe it or not, I was scanning with my Leica M10. And that was a crazy thing to do because I bought a Leica M to Leica R adapter and was using my Leica R 60mm 2.8 macro lens with its 1:1 true to life size adapter. It's totally doable. You can do it. I did it with a homemade DIY stand. I bought a little piece of wood for a couple bucks, and then I went to Home Depot and bought a big steel pipe that's screwed into a base. And I bolted the base to the piece of wood, and then on the pipe, I put a Mayfer clamp. And then with the Mayfer clamp, you can easily just throw in a little 1/4-20 spigot into that Mayfer clamp and then put that on a ball head and then throw the camera on the ball head. And then as the light pad, I just use the Cinestill light pad. It's pretty good. You have to get like a little 3D printed film holder made by Rollei. And it's pretty good because it has an S-curve and it lets the film negative lie flat. That's what I was doing in the beginning, scanning film. It's horrific. And then later on, even though I kept using Negative Lab Pro, later on, I graduated, I swapped out the M10 for the A7C Mark II, which I also film with, but I am still using the Leica R macro with its 1:1 adapter. Now, the key here is that I did pay Steve's camera $450, like, I don't know how many, it's been a while since it got CLA'd, like at least 3 years ago, I got that 60mm CLA'd, but it's still pristine condition. There's no dust, there's no haze in it. but still it's from the 1970s, right? So it's probably not ideal to be doing, scanning film with an old lens like that, but it's pretty good. But I think I would not recommend that. Just get like a normal macro lens for your camera. The other thing is, as I don't use my DIY stand anymore, I've replaced that with the Rollei EZ35. I got a really good open box deal on that, and I love that thing. However, I did not love it until I got the sprocket holder and the duster for it, which is like, it's a little over $100 to get both those add-ons to add to the Rollei EZ35, but it 100% is necessary. I don't care about seeing the sprockets, and that's because you literally need the sprocket holder to get rid of the vignette. So the little light box that the Rollei EZ35 it just has horrible vignette, and there's been a lot of complaints about that online. And also it's a huge dust box, so you have to get the duster, that dusts the film off as you push it in. And then to take it to a next level, I have a electronic blower that I've showed here in the past, how I clean out my M3. So I just blast the hell out of that Rollei EZ35. When I'm not using it, I keep it sealed up in a Ziploc bag because it is a dust box. On top of that, what I found was this amazing anti-static cloth from Ilford. It's not your normal everyday microfiber cloth. I don't even think it is a microfiber cloth. It's just called an anti-staticum cloth from Ilford, and it's amazing. I use that to wipe down the entire Rollei EZ35 inside and out after I blow it off real good with the electric blower. And then not only do I have the film going through the duster that's connected to the Rollei, but I also have that anti-static cloth pulling, the film is pulling through that before it goes into the duster. And I have zero issues with dust, because dust was a huge nitpicky thing for me. And I know some people say it's really easy to get rid of in Lightroom and all this, but I don't have the time for that. Like, I'm not that type of person. I'm not a huge color gradist either. And, I'm one of those guys that just clicks a couple buttons and this is what it is. And I don't know. I don't have any problem with it. I mainly especially, I think that's why I like black and white so much too. There's no hues, there's no craziness. It's just contrast and exposure, and away we go. And then that brings us to the end, who the ultimate winner was. And for me, it was the Kentmere Pan 400. It was the winner, not the clear winner. I do think it was heavily influenced by price, combined with just the versatility of the film, seeing how it was. Now, so that was the one that I started bulk loading. I don't know, it just seemed to be the perfect balance between everything that I liked out of all of these. If it had nothing to do with price, 100% the winner would have been Tri-X 400. The Kentmere 400 goes for $100. Not anywhere near the same results, but the Kentmere, for half the price, I feel like compared to all these others in terms of the versatility, yeah, man, the Kentmere 400 took it. But the more I've been shooting on this now, maybe 5-6 rolls in with this since I've been bulk loading it, I think that I've really been thinking strongly, especially now that I do a more traditional way of developing with the ilfosol 3. Again, let me know if you know of a better developer for a 400 speed film, but maybe you won't have to let me know that, because I think what the next step is going to be once this 100 feet is done of the 400. I love that Kentmere Pan 200 so much. I think I might do that and start pushing it. I think that might be the next level of this game. Perhaps. Either way, let me know down in the comments what your favorite black and white film is, regardless of the speed of it, because like I said, I just love trying out new films. It's fun to me. I love it. It's and when you compare it to the digital world, it's so much cheaper than having to, go out and rent every different camera to get the feel of that different sensor. Whereas this, this is the original sensor right here. These little rolls, these little canisters, so it's just really rad to just really try it out. And I know there are plenty of YouTubers and people on the internet that want to say that every black and white film is the same. And I can confidently tell you that it's not, at least not to me. And I think in this video, you can get an idea of that yeah, you know what? He is a little bit right here. Not every single black and white film is the same. Certainly not when you compare the speeds of them, but also just just look at something like that Arista EDU 400 versus something like the Kodak Tri-X. Right? That's a huge difference in performance, certainly when they were shot side by side and developed the same way the same day. That's gnarly to see those results, right? So to make a claim that every black and white film is the same, nah, you will never convince me of that. I'm sorry. And man, this was a beast to get done. This is something that I knew I wanted to put together for a while, mainly for me. But then since I had done it, I decided, you know what? Yeah, we should just get this out there and maybe it'll be helpful to someone. And for the rest of you that are thinking about getting into developing your own black and white film, be on the lookout for why to stay away from those monobaths. All right. Also, if you want to check it out, I left a link to my website down below where I've put together a little page with my entire like at-home DIY black and white home developing kit. So if you want to go check that out.
And if you have the proper luck and the holy endurance, the gods just might deliver.